All right, hello everybody, and thank you for tuning into this weekly weather briefing for April 2nd, 2020. I'm Kyle Thiem, and it looks like we have mostly a quiet week going forward, so that's the good news. But first, I want to start out, we're going to do just a quick recap of what went down here on March 31st here a couple days ago. We had a pretty significant windstorm that went across northern and central Georgia. Then we'll get into the rest of the week. It looks pretty clear, calm, and dry. Beautiful weather outside, and then as we get into next week, we're going to have a little bit more of an unsettled pattern, but we're not expecting another major storm system until maybe next weekend. So just to start off, here was our March 31st event. Here's an archive of some of the radar imagery we had across the state. So the setup for this was we had a low pressure system that was moving across Georgia with a lot of upper level support for it, which kind of produced a strong line of storms that came in from Alabama. And another wave of stronger storms that came in just south of a warm front that was coming into central Georgia. But as I'm transitioning forward here, you can see this first wave actually caused quite a bit of damage just south of the major metropolitan area. As this goes through, you can see kind of a little bow here where my mouse is kind of centered at that came in from Alabama. This actually caused quite a bit of significant damage, mostly across Coweta and Fayette counties. But we had damage reports all the way from Heard County over to the Greene County areas as that first wave kind of swept through. Now, the good news for that was, as much as you can try to be a glass half full kind of person, is with that wave of storms that came through, it produced quite a bit of cold air, which helped keep this warm front a little further down to the south. So that allowed a lot of these other storms to basically stay a little bit further south. That did produce some tornado warnings down there. We did have a couple warnings for our area, but it looks like they did not materialize as they came in. So that's the good news with that first wave, if we can have any, is that it kind of kept some of these more severe supercells down further south into southern Georgia and out of our area at least. So zooming in a little bit at this windstorm system that came across Coweta County here, we see Noonan centered there on the screen. As this windstorm came through, you can see a lot of these higher values in this little wave that came through here. And one of the reasons I wanted to show this is that we had a lot of reports of tornadoes with this system, but we can clearly see here this is one solid line of enhanced winds. You can see the bowing out of it, which is why we were so confident that we didn't really have a tornado with this. It was a straight line wind system. It was just spectacularly damaging with how broad it was and some of the wind speeds we were seeing. In the upper levels here, we were getting wind speed estimates over 60 knots. And it's possible, while we're still doing some evaluations and trying to collect some damage indicators across Coweta County, we are kind of leaning that this system did produce somewhere between 70 and 80 mile per hour wind speeds over a pretty large swath of the county. So if we go forward here, as that system transitions into Peachtree City there, we can see some of the damage indicators that we're getting over the last several days across this swath. You can see this big chunk came out of Coweta County as they forwarded about 5 pages of reports of downed trees and power lines over to us, including around at least a dozen reports of some trees down, causing some damage to structures, and I'm sure there's even more than that. As a couple of reports of that same stuff going over into like Henry's counties over there, north of Griffin and near McDonough. So we had a lot of damage that went across there. It was one of the strongest windstorm systems of straight line winds that we've had in a long time around the area. So it has quite a bit of damage, and we're still sorting it out, hoping to get a public information statement out in the next coming days with some of our surveys that were done in that area. So getting a little bit more to date, this is some of the morning lows that we had. We got pretty chilly last night. Most places around the area saw temperatures in the lower 40s or even upper 30s. We did have a little bit of below freezing temps all the way up in the northeast Georgia mountains. So far, the frost freeze program hasn't started up there yet, so it didn't prompt any warnings from us. But it was pretty brisky out there compared to what we've had, for the last several weeks. So it's kind of a snap back to maybe back to February, I guess, to start out this April. But for the most part, as we're seeing conditions currently, we got temps that are rising up right now into the upper 50s, lower 60s across the area. A big high pressure up in the Ohio River Valley with the surface ridge coming all the way down to the southeast, which is keeping us nice and cool. calm and clear. We can see not a cloud in the sky as we took this imagery earlier this morning. As we start to go into the weekend ahead, that high pressure is going to stick around for a little bit, and we're going to really have some nice conditions to really shelter in place for. Highs are going to be in the upper 60s and lower 70s today on Thursday. But as we get into Friday, Saturday, Sunday, those highs are going to creep up a little bit each day, getting into the 70s and near 80s as we go through Sunday for most of the area, 80s down south. Lows are also going to be in the 40s tonight once again, but it's going to be increasing with each given night until we get up into the 50s through this weekend. The only chance for precip that we have going in through the weekend is going to be on Sunday. Right now we have a slight chance of showers out for Sunday, but otherwise we're expecting really calm and dry conditions. As we get into early next week, especially getting into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we start getting into a little bit more of an unsettled pattern. And there's still some discrepancy with the models. I am showing you one of them here. This is our GFS model, North American model. And this is just one model solution out of several, so take it with a grain of salt, but just to get an overall sense of what we could be expecting throughout these next couple of days. So as we get into Monday and Tuesday here, Tuesday is going to be our best shot at precip with an extra enhanced wave coming through as we have a low pressure system go across the northern plains and a front try to push in down this way. So Tuesday is going to be our best shot for rain and some isolated thunderstorms. But in general, we're going to have at least scattered precipitation likely going through from Monday into at least Wednesday. And at least with this model solution we see as we get into Friday time period, at least we start to clear up a little bit. Now something I'll add in, and I don't have it in this imagery here, it does look in the models in the extended period as we get into the weekend, will be our next shot for a stronger storm system to come through. So we'll be talking about that probably next week in our weekly weather briefing. But for now, it's a little bit too far out to really get into any details about. But just as a heads up, that's what we're most likely expecting. But the good news with this is we're not expecting any major rainfalls to come through as we get in through next week. This is our days 1 through 7 forecast precipitation, but this is mostly from Sunday night onward. And as you can see, outside the mountainous regions where some orographic lift is going to push some of those values up a little bit, we're mostly looking at somewhere between a 1/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches. Higher precips are probably going to be up towards northwest Georgia area. So nothing going back to the February and March days where we were getting major flooding across the areas, thankfully. But as we get into that 6 to 10 day outlook, we do see over on the left, we do have slightly higher chances to get above normal precipitation, mainly focused on that North Georgia time period. And that's mostly going to manifest in the storm system we could be expecting next weekend, where we do have a chance to get some stronger storms out of that. But over on the right, if you take a look at that, we have very large chances to see some above normal temperatures as we start to get in through next week. So it looks like April is going to start out being relatively cool, and then it's going to ramp up and get pretty warm and toasty here as we get into next week. So just a quick summary, I just looked at the March 31st, 2020 recap. We are trying to get a little bit more information out with that major windstorm system that came through, hopefully today or tomorrow, as we get in a little bit more information as to what kind of damage we occurred across Coweta County. But we did have some significant damage across that swath, which caused, at least in Coweta County, hundreds of trees down, several buildings with structural damage all the way over into at least Henry County, if not further. So it was pretty significant, one of the more damaging systems we'll probably have for most of the year. Calm, clear, and dry conditions through most of the weekend. Unfortunately, we do have the shelter-in-place order that's going to come down here pretty soon, so that's pretty unfortunate to have some of these beautiful conditions in, but at least we can open up the windows and be comfortable inside. Highs are going to be in the upper 60s to near 80 down as we get into the central Georgia area, but lows are going to be in the 40s to 50s, increasing with each day. And then again, as we start in next week, we start to get a little bit more unsettled. Some scattered showers and thunderstorms could start to pop their heads in by Monday and Tuesday. Especially Tuesday is the best chance of storms again. And then as we get into the extended period, it looks like we could have another strong storm system next weekend. We'll talk about that more again on next Thursday. And it does look like we have a warm-up coming as we start to get in, most likely seeing temperatures well above normal. So that's all I have here for your weekly weather briefing. If you need to get a hold of us, feel free to reach out through Twitter or chat, and hope you all have a good week.